Welcome to Across the Aisle. I'm Gail Garbrandt, and thank you for joining us. The show is on Tuesdays at 7 o'clock p.m. and Fridays at 4:30 p.m. If that doesn't work with your schedule, don't worry. You can catch us on WJERTV2.com, or you can find us on YouTube by searching under Across the Aisle, and you'll get a chance to look at all of our past episodes and continue to follow the show. So we thank you for tuning in. Today's topic is the Ohio Marijuana Legalization Initiative, which is issue number 3, which will be on the ballot on November 3rd, 2015 for Ohio voters to decide. This legalization initiative is an Ohio-initiated constitutional amendment. The measure would legalize the limited sale and use of recreational and medicinal marijuana. It would create 10 facilities with exclusive rights to commercially grow the drug. Issue 3 legalizes the home growing of up to 4 flowering marijuana plants and 8 ounces of usable product per grow permit. So you do have to have a permit if this passes to have your 4 plants for your own personal use. Issue 3 is also accompanied on the ballot by Issue 2, which was added by the Ohio legislature, who was concerned with the monopoly of the facilities with exclusive rights. If both issues pass, the Secretary of State has said that Issue 2 would invalidate Issue 3, but the proponents of the amendment say that's not true. So if both issues pass, we're probably going to see this thrown into the courts. So I want you to stay tuned. We are not trying to tell you how to vote on this issue, but we want to give you some really important factual information along with some statistics from Colorado, where this initiative was passed. The use of medicinal and recreational marijuana is now legal in 4 states in the United States: Colorado, Alaska, Washington, and Oregon, as well as the District of Columbia. And this whole movement actually started in 1972 in the state of California, which has always been kind of progressive with these kinds of initiatives. They're called propositions in California, and their proposition in 1972 failed. So please stay tuned. We have some important guests with us this evening. We're going to be starting out with Orvis Campbell, who is the Chief Deputy of the Tuscarawas County Sheriff's Department, and he's going to talk about the law enforcement aspects of this proposed initiative. And then we're going to follow up with Jody Salvo, who is a licensed social worker with Professional Counseling Services, and she's going to talk about some of the health concerns and some of the marketing that has caused people to kind of open their eyes and say, wait a minute, maybe we better take a second look at this legislation. So thanks again for joining us, and stay tuned. We'll be right back on Across the Aisle.
Myers & Miller Podiatry provides complete foot and ankle care to patients of all ages. The practice was established in 2000 by Dr. Adam Myers and has grown to include Dr. Andy Miller in 2007, Dr. Jason Bakich in 2010, and most recently Dr. Kristen Henry in 2015. Our core values of respect and honesty are the basis for how we manage our practice, and we continue to grow by building relationships with our patients in order to better serve their needs. Myers & Miller Podiatry serves Tuscarawas and Holmes counties with offices in Dover, Sugar Creek, Newcomerstown, Millersburg, and our newest location in Yorksville. Let's get started with building our relationship.
WJER and TV2 would like to introduce you to a new website, WJERTV2.com, where you can watch exciting high school football, soccer, and volleyball replays from TV2 Sports on your home computer, smartphone, or tablet. Also watch the latest episodes of TV2's original programming, Sports Talk, The Garden Girl, The Not So Shy Chef, Off the Record, and Medical Minutes, as well as catch up on local community news and search for local businesses. So make sure to check out the new WJERTV2.com community website where everything's local.
Thanks for joining us on Across the Aisle. My guest today is our Orvis Campbell, our Chief Deputy Tuscarawas County Sheriff, and we are talking about issue number 3, Ohio's marijuana legalization initiative, which all Ohioans who are registered to vote can vote on the November ballot. So Orvis, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. And I'm anxious to hear your thoughts from a law enforcement standpoint on this legalization of marijuana, because one of the first television ads that went on from Responsible Ohio was a sheriff saying it's time that law enforcement starts using their money to track down real criminals. And I just wondered how this is going to impact your budget. How much money and how much time do you spend now tracking down drug offenders? And I know you've done a lot of research and done a lot of public speaking on this issue, so I'm just going to turn it over to you and give us some insight so our voters can make some really informed decisions when they go into that ballot booth.
Well, I appreciate it, Gail. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak about this. Issue 3 involving the legalization of marijuana for both medicinal and recreational purposes has most all of law enforcement very concerned. One of the realities in our business is almost all serious crime is related to addiction, and there's just no way around that. You speak with any officer that you know here, and you speak with the courts and probation officers, and this is the source of crime. Burglaries, robberies, the more serious types of crimes like that are all related to addiction. So that's where our concern comes in. I think when people think about marijuana, they typically think of a harmless drug from the 60s or 70s, and they're completely unfamiliar with what we're seeing today. With respect to what we see in law enforcement, we see lives destroyed. Here in Tuscarawas County, we have a population of a little over 90,000, and I think people would be shocked to know how regular it is for us to be responding to drug overdoses and deaths. And to get into that further, when we interview these people, whether they're a suspect in a crime or they're charged with a drug crime or they've overdosed, and we're speaking to them about the types of things that they're involved in, they almost always relate back to their first experiences with marijuana. And simply for that reason, marijuana is an important issue for us. But I can't say that it's where we're able to put a significant amount of efforts right now, as far as establishing a priority for drug investigations in Ohio. Now, marijuana is illegal. We do investigate crimes involving marijuana and those who traffic it and things like that. However, our priorities are clearly, some of the more hardcore drugs such as heroin, cocaine. In fact, as a supervisor, I can say that there's never a case where we get information on a heroin dealer and a marijuana dealer where we choose to go after the marijuana dealer first. Mm-hmm. But it is important because they're so very closely tied. Sure. Almost all these hardcore users also use marijuana, began with marijuana. We hear stories about how when they first began using marijuana, that's when their life really started to change for the negative. Mm-hmm. And it almost kind of snuck up on them. They changed their friends, they changed the way they attacked work or the way they attacked school, and it led them down a path that was almost all downhill. Mm-hmm. That's what our concern is, because we see that every day, and we think that it's going to get far worse. Now, our agency, just like every other agency, looks to other states that have passed these types of laws, looking for some sort of guidance of where it's at. So Colorado being the most relevant, the Rocky Mountain area, HIDTA, which stands for High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, produces periodical reports on how the marijuana industry has affected their state. And unfortunately, there's just no way around it. It's been negative in almost all areas. Traffic fatalities have gone up. 92% is our most recent statistic. Crime has gone up even another 12%. Most people think that, and the way it's advertised for proponents of issue 3 is that this will somehow make marijuana a safer industry where it'll be better regulated and it'll get rid of the black market and it'll get rid of drug dealers. And that just simply isn't what's holding true in Colorado. When you read these reports, they're astonishing to find out that still 40% of all marijuana sold in Colorado is sold on the black market. It's not medicinal marijuana that's sold in stores, or even the edibles and regular marijuana sold in stores. It's still coming on the black market because to get laws like this passed, it involves a tax. In Ohio specifically, it's a 15% tax. That's a high tax rate. Mm-hmm. So when you have a high tax rate like that produces quite a bit of black market business. Why pay an extra 15% right, if you don't need to? So, it's unfortunate for those who are hoping that marijuana is going to be a great solution to problems, but it's not. I'm not an expert in the business end of it, but if you look at Ohio's Office of Business Management, they're predicting a far lower number of revenue than the Responsible Ohio Group is. And I think that's one of the reasons some people may support it, because I think that it'll give a great boost to Ohio. But what we see is that our costs are going to go up. That's what's happened to law enforcement in Colorado. So we believe that the social costs, including law enforcement, are going to go way up. In 2014, 77% of all drivers in Colorado arrested for driving under the influence were using marijuana.
77?
77%. And
wow.
That's coming from the state of Colorado in their official records. Emergency room visits are way up. Overdoses are way up. I think you've already had a program or an interview that involved these edibles, but the danger level is great, and people get very sick from this. People end up in the emergency room, so emergency rooms are taxed with greater numbers. And when it comes down to children, which is another huge concern of law enforcement, children are trying it at a much younger age. There's several studies that show that a much greater percentage of children are trying it younger. We know what that does to kids in school. That has a direct link to crime. Kids that don't stay in school end up committing crimes. Suspensions are way up, expulsions are way up, and all of this is directly linked to marijuana and not any other drugs. So, marijuana will stay something that we have to put a lot of time into investigating. It will always be a priority because addiction is a priority for us. As long as we have addiction, we're going to have high crime. And the drug war has been criticized and deemed as a failure. And at times you can't argue with that. At times you feel like you're losing or you're fighting a losing battle. Mm-hmm. However, for me, it's not really important as to whether or not we're winning or losing. It's really important as to whether or not we should be fighting it. And right. When you interview people day after day who are robbing from their parents and robbing from their neighbors and stealing from their friends and breaking into cars and houses every day, and then when you interview them and you know that it's what they're trying to do is feed their addiction, that has to be a priority for law enforcement. So, we work with the courts and probation officers every day to try to invent better ways to fight this, to try to invent better ways to treat addicts. Mm-hmm. And that's another area that scares us. We already have a very difficult time finding facilities to treat some of the addicts that we have. And I believe those addicts will go, that percentage of those addicted will go way up. So I don't think there's any avoiding the fact that crime will go up if marijuana is legalized in Ohio.
Well, Orvis, we really do appreciate your expertise and your concerns from a law enforcement perspective, and it certainly does give everyone another facet of this issue to really seriously consider. So thank you again for helping us out this evening.
Oh, thank you for having me on.
Hi, I'm Elaine Miller with Naturally Green Cleaning Service. My company serves both commercial and residential clients. We do general cleaning, spring and fall, empty homes to get them move-in ready, and final cleans for new construction. We use eco-friendly cleaning products that leave your home or office fresh, clean, and safe for you, your family, pets, or coworkers. Our focus at Naturally Green is to provide excellent customer service paired with outstanding work to build a relationship of trust with you, our clients. Having served the area 4+ years, we have had many referrals and testimonials that you can access on our website at www.naturallygreencs.com. Our work sells itself, therefore we have never had any contracts even with our largest commercial accounts. Call us today for your free quote and see what makes our company stand out.
Hi, I'm TV2 Sports Talk's Bill Morgan. Some people are outstanding at playing sports, and then there's me. While we at TV2 Sports Talk may have never been All-State on the field, we are Tuscarawas County's MVP when it comes to local television sports talk and play-by-play. Catch TV2 Sports Talk Wednesday nights at 7 and Friday afternoons at 5 on DMG Channel 2.
Welcome back to Across the Aisle. I'm Gail Garbrandt. And for those of you just tuning in, the show is on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. and Fridays at 4:30 p.m. We're glad to have you here. We had just talked with the Deputy Sheriff for Tuscarawas County, Orvis Campbell, who gave us some insights on the law enforcement side of Issue 2 and Issue 3, which are on the ballot in November. And our guest now is Jody Salvo. Hi, Jody. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Thanks so much for coming and taking time out of your busy schedule. Jody is the Director of Prevention Services for Personal, Family, and Counseling Services. She has done a tremendous amount of public speaking on this issue, and we are fortunate to have her here to give us some insight on what some people might think as complicated or hidden impacts of this legislation that are not quite readily apparent. So Jody, let's hear what you have to say about Issue 2 and Issue 3.
Sounds great. You know, I think I'm going to start with Issue 3, just the legalization of medicinal and recreational marijuana. I'm going to start just a little bit of my background. I am a licensed social worker, but I am also a prevention specialist. And so what I do is how do we prevent substance abuse, and in particular here in our county. I provide prevention services to the school districts in Tuscarawas County. So this is a pretty dear to my heart issue for a couple reasons. When we're looking at Issue 3, it's packaged as sometimes this is a medicinal issue. And sometimes people might feel like, man, this makes sense to me medicinally, but I kind of want to talk about this issue in the terms that Ohio is the first state where they've tried to pass medicinal and recreational marijuana legalization at the same time. What that means is on the advertisements we're seeing, we're really kind of getting this, it's compassionate, it's right, there's reasons that we need to call this medicine. And if people really go that direction, they might miss that recreational piece can come right in. So I want to talk about both of those issues. First of all, is marijuana medicine? I think that's something that we grapple with as public. We have a lot of information coming at us calling marijuana medicine. But my two major points of challenge, or that I like people to think about, is there any medicine that we've ever voted for in the United States constitutionally on a ballot issue? And that answer is no. And the second, is there any medicine in the United States that has bypassed the FDA process? And the answer to that is also no. And I say that because we have an FDA process here in the United States to protect the residents, the people of the United States. And what the FDA does is they look at medicine, they look at food, and they say, is this safe? There's a lot of testing, there's a lot of research that goes through a product before we say this is okay. Because we vote on something constitutionally, I don't think this is still going to be medicine. It is still not going to require a physician prescription, and it is still not going for a traditional pharmacy. What that means is if someone has some other health contradictions, do they have heart disease? What else is going on? Is this safe, and is this regulated? So there are other states that are saying we have legalization of medicinal marijuana. But again, it's not through a physician prescription, it's not coming through a pharmacy, and it's not well controlled. So those are just some of the issues on the medicine, and people will say, well, it's all natural, it's not addictive, and I just want to challenge that thought a little bit. The opium plant is actually all natural, definitely has medicinal benefits, but we don't smoke opium. That would not be healthy for persons to smoke opium. But yet the controlled substance from the opium plant is codeine and morphine. And I think that's really what we need to be looking at, is a regulated FDA process before we would call something medicine. I will tell you, if the marijuana goes through that FDA process, you wouldn't get high from it, you wouldn't smoke it, and it would be well controlled. Also, people think, well, why are we holding out? There is synthetic forms of marijuana that has been legalized and used in all 50 states. So that would kind of be the medicinal piece I'd first want to just kind of hit on. Do you have any questions there, Gail?
No, I think you've done a really good job about bringing that to light, because most people see it as a recreational drug. And I know there are some supporters of this legislation that say, well, you know, marijuana is illegal, and I have someone in my family who is terminally ill, so now I have to leave Ohio to let them have marijuana legally to relieve their suffering and pain.
And my answer to that, first of all, I think we're being really sold this message of this is really widely needed. When I look at this marijuana issue, what I do is I look at Colorado. Colorado is the state that has first really unrolled the recreational piece and has been medicinally legal for a while. And I say, well, who's using? What's going on? And one of the things we do know is this majority of people that are using medicinal marijuana are using it for chronic pain. And even in the state of California, 95% of the medicinal card holders, marijuana medicinal card holders, the average profile is a 32-year-old white male with a history of substance abuse. We are not talking HIV and cancer and AIDS and seizures. Do those populations exist? They do, but it's under the 2 to 3% of the population are seeking out those efforts. So if you would have one of those type situations, first of all, you can certainly ask your physician about the synthetic forms of marijuana at this point, which would be Marinol, which is, again, prescribed by a physician. Or you can also ask about clinical trials, because they are out there. So those would be two ways I would say, you know, let's kind of look through a real process that would ensure a quality controlled product. So on that issue, if we go back to the recreational issue, if people feel that this is medicine and they vote that way, the issue is the recreational piece comes in. And some people really think marijuana, no big deal. I get that all the time. I speak everywhere. A couple things people need to understand is marijuana has changed over the decades. Marijuana has a chemical called THC in it, and that's what gets you actively high. In the 70s, 80s, the percentage of that THC was about 1 to 2%, and it has risen over the years. 2010, it hit 10% THC, and that's where we started to see addiction, and it is rising from 10% to 10 to 12 here. Colorado right now, just an average marijuana joint would probably be about 70% THC, but with the legalization, what has happened is they've been able to really increase the THC level. What does that mean? We didn't really have history of addiction with those lower THC amounts. Now, we might have problem with marijuana use. We have significant research and changes in brain development, and demotivation of persons, you can see that. But once legalization came, what happened is marijuana itself changed. First of all, it went from smoking a joint, and that's what a lot of people think about when they think about legalization to marijuana, to edible products. And I just want to show you, these are products that they're called edibles. What they are is they're infused marijuana products. So the marijuana is infused into your foods or your drinks. Now, with the edibles, a couple things. The THC levels are higher in edibles, so they can have 10 to 30% THC. What we are seeing, especially in Colorado, they were packaged very much for youth. Candy bars, cereal box, lollipops, sodas, cotton candy. But the other problems with this, if someone's smoking to get high, they immediately get high. If you're eating to get high, it can take an hour, hour and a half to metabolize in your system, which means you can consume quite a lot of THC, not be confident of what you're consuming, and might find yourself have consumed a lot more than you would think you would. And what happens then is we see differences in marijuana presentations, from maybe a mellow marijuana high to extreme paranoia and hallucination. But it doesn't stop here with the edibles. They also have higher form of concentrates of marijuana that never existed prior to marijuana legalization. And these extracts can have 70 to 90% THC. And with these, we're seeing hospitalizations, psychotic episodes, hallucinations. Mm-hmm. So what we see is marijuana changes with legalization.
Well, thank you, Jody. That is really a lot of information that most people didn't know about, and I think it's really going to help our voters make a more informed decision when they go into that ballot box in November.
WJER and TV2 would like to introduce you to a new website, WJERTV2.com, where you can watch exciting high school football, soccer, and volleyball replays from TV2 Sports on your home computer, smartphone, or tablet. Also watch the latest episodes of TV2's original programming, Sports Talk, The Garden Girl, The Not So Shy Chef, Off the Record, and Medical Minutes, as well as catch up on local community news and search for local businesses. So make sure to check out the new WJERTV2.com community website, where everything's local.
Right now, marijuana is sold in every corner of Ohio by criminals to people of all ages. Responsible Ohio's plan would change all that. This plan will smother the black market run by criminal dealers, provide the necessary regulatory control to keep marijuana out of the hands of kids, and make certain it's safe for adult consumers. At every level, from seed to sale, this product will be subject to strict licensing oversight, taxation, testing, and monitoring. Responsible Ohio's marijuana legalization amendment would establish the Marijuana Control Commission, whose job it will be to regulate the industry and establish a three-tiered transparent regulatory system to allow the state to regulate and tax the commercial sale of marijuana for adult personal use. Because of the state's interest in tightly regulating this process, there will be 10 state-regulated wholesalers who can only sell to retailers, not the public. Limiting the number of growing sites is necessary in order to regulate the industry and test what product is produced. The number of retail locations will be limited, licensed, and regulated. These stores will be prohibited from locating near schools, houses of worship, libraries, and daycares. Retailers will only be able to sell to adults 21 years and older after having received approval by the voters in the precinct where the retailer is located, a process similar to Ohio's alcohol permitting policy that allows voters to decide if a retail store is allowed in their area. Selling to people under the age of 21 subjects the offender to enhanced criminal penalties, and users will be prohibited from consuming marijuana in public, at schools, and in the workplace. It will still be illegal to operate motor vehicles and machinery while under the influence. Also, it does not take away the right of employers to drug test or change current workplace safety laws. Drug-free workplaces will remain drug-free. Now is the time for real reform, and Responsible Ohio is leading the way. Get more information at responsibleohio.com. But most importantly, get out and vote yes in November.